Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 meeting of the Lake Havasu City Planning and Zoning Commission. If you'd please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Susanna, can you hear me? Commissioner Susanna Ballard.
Present.
Commissioner Joan DeZuro.
Present.
Commissioner Paul Lair.
Here.
Vice Chair Tiffany Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Lonnie Stevenson.
Here.
Chair Jim Harris.
Here.
Commissioner Gabrielle Medley. Commissioner Mary Costa. Commissioner J.P. Thornton. Commissioner Phil Annette.
Okay, seeing as we have one vacancy this morning, Mr. Annette, would you come fill that position here at the dais? Okay, Mr. Gilbert, we have correspondence and announcements.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. The last meeting of the Planning Commission was on October 2nd, and we've had a lot happen in the meantime. First, I want to update you on the progress of the general plan update. We went out for RFPs, and we received 2 proposals back. Both of them are very good. They're being analyzed at the present time, and we'll be interviewing them in the next few weeks. So there'll be more to come on that as far as an update. Regarding some of the actions by council that came through this commission on various projects, the Anderson Motorsports rezoning was approved by council on October 22nd. And on a couple other projects that have been here but aren't directly related to anything done recently, 7,000 Chenoweth right-of-way dedication to the city for Chenoweth was approved by council, as well as the Villages of Victoria Farms development agreement for the very large 300-unit manufactured home plan development that's going to be up at Victoria Farms in Chenoweth. So those were approved by council, and we have several rezones bubbling right now, and I'll go over those later as to what's coming in the future when we get to the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, minutes of the last meeting. Commissioners, are there any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes of the last meeting? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ballard.
I'd like to approve the minutes of the meeting of October 2nd, 2024 as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ballard, a second by Ms. Wilson to approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's call for the question.
The motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Let me first start by saying that this is a public hearing and there is a structured order to this proceeding. The city staff will present each item. There will be time for the commission to ask questions of the staff, and then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their case to the commission. That being done, we will then open the proceeding to the public for their questions and input. I would ask that anyone of the public that wishes to speak limit their trips to the podium and microphone to one only. Keep all comments to less than 3 minutes, and to stay on point and not discuss subject matter that is not pertinent to the decision being considered here today. After public testimony is taken, I will then close the public hearing and bring the motion back to the table for city staff's expectations and conditions and of approval, discussion amongst the commission, and eventually a motion to approve or disapprove. And I thank you in advance for your cooperation. The first item on today's agenda is item number ID 24-4547. This is a request to adopt resolution number 24-010, approving a conditional use permit for the operation of a mobile food unit for a period of 1 year at 1700 McCulloch Boulevard North. Mr. Gilbert, your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last fall, the City Council approved, in addition to the City Code, Section 5.24 regarding mobile food vendors. And there were exceptions made from having to get a conditional use permit for restaurants, bars, and resorts. The applicant today, which is Masala Kitchen Chaitanya Patel, they're related to the owners of the Days Inn, which is at 1700 McCulloch Boulevard North, and they wish to operate from that facility, but it's not a resort, it's a hotel motel. So as a result of that, in that section that City Council added, 5.24 requires that they get a full CUP through a public hearing process, and that the max limit of time on it is 1 year. So that, just wanted to set the background on that. You can see the property on the overhead. The mobile vendor location, and might scoot back and forth between these. The mobile vendor location is going to be on the paved portion of the Days Inn property. You'll notice it's kind of misshapen there a little bit, but when you go back to the original, there's a lot that is right here. They own both of these, but this parcel's unpaved, and so they would have to do improvements if they're going to locate there. But they're willing to locate at the westernmost end of the parking lot. The Days Inn has 88 rooms requiring 60 parking spaces, and the site contains 76 fully paid parking spaces. So the mobile food unit's presence will not impact the required amount of parking on the site. Staff has received no verbal, written, or email comment regarding the project from any of the neighbors. And the closest residentials to the southeast, which would be these condos here that are blocked from view by the two-story wing arm of the hotel. So there's no actual view of what's going on, and the only immediate neighbors are strip mall tenants in this building here adjacent to the grocery store. Advance this one slide again. This is their location, has to be, and then there's several conditions of approval that were required. Staff believes that it meets all the code requirements for compliance, with a few exceptions that we'll go into with the resolution itself, and that's contained here. These 6 conditions are contained in the Planning Commission resolution to ensure complete compliance with code. Number 1, this conditional use permit shall expire on November 20th, 2025, and will require a renewal application to continue operating beyond the state. Number 2, no more than 2 parking spaces shall be used by the mobile food unit on the subject property, and the use shall be located on a paved surface at least 10 feet from any property lines. Number 3, all operational requirements contained in City Code Chapter 5.24 shall be complied with at all times. Number 4, the applicant may utilize either a single mobile food truck or trailer as a part of its operation. However, the chosen vehicle must meet these conditions and all approval requirements contained in City Code Chapter 5.24. Number 5, all state, county, and local licensing requirements shall be completed prior to operation, including county health department permit, fire inspection, and Lake Havasu City business license issuance. City Code Chapter 5.24 provides details on these licensing requirements. And finally, number 6, written notification to the city by the property owner terminating the applicant's permission to be on the property will immediately terminate this conditional use permit without further action by the city. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report. The applicants are present.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff by commissioners? Anybody at all? All right. If the applicant is present, would you like to make a presentation? You don't have to, but if you'd like to, okay. No presentation by the applicant. Sounds pretty straightforward. All right. I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? Anybody at all? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing portion, bring it back to the table for staff's conditions and recommendations, which we already have had. All right, let's bring it to the table for a potential discussion and or a motion. Commissioners? Ms. Wilson.
Chairman?
Ms. Wilson.
So we've had several food truck applicants come before us, and my stance still stands firm that I don't believe that this is in the best interest of the city. I think that this just allows people to continue to find vacant areas to put food trucks, whether it's in an auxiliary to the hotel. I mean, you have restaurants right next to you. I just think that unfortunately this does a huge disservice to our restaurant owners that have spent the money on infrastructure and whatnot. And so for that reason, I am going to continue to be just against it.
Ms. Ballard.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see an issue with this. This is property owned by the owner of the motel. I think that set back from the street as far as it is, that I don't see any restrictions that should be placed on this, and I would be in favor of this.
Okay, any other members? Ms. Zero.
I was concerned about the food trucks at first as well, but now what I found is this seems to be what our residents love and our visitors. If you look at any of the food trucks, they are swarmed because people like, I don't know why, it's different than my generation. They like taking the food home. They don't like to sit down in restaurants as much anymore. And our restaurants do pretty well, I think, in most cases. But I think this is another option for the people in our city with 1.6 million visitors to our city. This is just another option for them to grab something, take it to the lake, do things like that, and gives us a different option as far as kinds of food that we can get in our city. So I'm leaning in. I agree with Ms. Ballard that this is basically set on their property. It's set back. It's away from the other things. So I'm inclined to say this is probably a good plan for the city.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Annette.
So being brand new here,
Pull your microphone up to the...
so being brand new, I still have my question would be, is this something that would open up the floodgates? Like if every hotel owner in town wanted to put a food truck in the parking lot, could they? Or would that be every time it'd be a conditional use approval? And
They would have to go through the process. Same.
if every business owner wanted to put a food truck in their property, could they?
Gilbert.
Mr. Chairman, in response to when the city council crafted this city code section 5.24 last year, there was a lot of input taken from the community as a whole and the food truck operators before they passed this ordinance. And what it includes is if it's an owner of a restaurant, bar, or resort, they only have to go through an administrative process. But if it's any other type of business, they have to go through a full CUP. And this is the first one in a year that we've had to actually had to go to a full CUP. So it doesn't seem to be hugely common. Most of the other ones do the administrative process because they're restaurants, bars, or resorts, which council decided to specifically exclude from this process.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Anybody else? Any further discussion? Mr. Thornton.
I don't feel like this is a very good location for this as well. It's the closest place to where you guys are going to set your food truck is La Caracha, which is now a brick and mortar that used to be a food truck. You've got Jersey Mike's. You've got Lynn's Little China right there, right across the street. There's Chico's Tacos. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of places. And having the visitors that go to the Days Inn, that's good for them to have these places to go to, not right on that. I feel it's taken away from our community, the people that put the money and the time and the effort into building their restaurants for our community. You take food to go. I mean, there's from any of those places. It has to be easy to walk out of your room and go grab something from the food truck. That'd be great. But you could also walk 50 more yards or 50 more feet and get another get someone that's already been putting into this community. So I'm definitely a no on this. We don't need to start. I think there's better locations for food trucks, which would be where it's not as accessible by foot, and maybe communities where somewhere a little more off the highway or something where there's no restaurants but when we're right in the middle of a community that we're trying to build and grow, putting a food truck right there is it's counterproductive for what we're trying to do for the growth of our city.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ballard.
I don't believe that it's in the best interest of our planning commission to make a determination on what kind of food any visitor would be looking for and make that determination. So therefore, I'm still in favor of this.
I'd like to weigh in on this. I'm taking the approach that I'm on board with this. I don't have a problem with this being in this location. It's an ancillary business to an existing business. It's on their site, and I don't see a problem with this type of business in this location. They're going through the process. We do screen these things, and I don't see this as an obstructive business in this location. So I'd vote in favor. Anybody else? All right, we are at the table for a motion. Anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Zero.
I make a motion to approve the CUP by Masala Kitchen for the 1 year with all of the 6 conditions that were added to the CUP.
I second.
We have a motion by Ms. Zero and a second by Ms. Ballard to approve ID 24-4547 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion, commissioners? Hearing none, let's call for the question.
The motion passes 4-3.
Congratulations and good luck. The next item on the agenda is ID 24-4545. This is a request to amend City Code Sections 14.05.03, Standard Regulatory Procedures, to add 3 frames per, I need to put my glasses on. To add time frames for administrative completeness of zoning applications and 14.05.04 K5 zoning map amendment protest to exclude government-owned property from protest property area. Mr. Gilbert, your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some background on this. These changes are actually being required of the city by Arizona Senate Bill 1162, passed and signed by the governor on April 23rd, 2024. And they require action on these items to be added to our city code by January 1 of 2025. So we're following the mandatory process here to comply with state law and enact these changes. What they essentially do is, for example, with the recent Anderson Power Sports project, any city-owned property or right-of-ways would not be included anymore in calculation of protest petitions. It wasn't included in that case either, but it just into the future, this will be going forward a requirement. So that's one of the items. Another one is regarding timeframes for determining completeness of applications through the administrative process. And that sets specific timelines with extension requirements and so on, which the details are in your packet. It's a very complicated process, as you can see from the track changes that were worked out through the city attorney's office. We had to incorporate them in the best way and manner possible to get them consistent with our current code, so we didn't have to make too big of changes and make them as understandable as possible. But essentially, it's just time frame related for review of applications and removing city government owned property from consideration in protest petitions for zoning applications. That's all it is.
So this is something that is mandated by the state,
Yes.
pretty much?
Similar to chickens earlier this year.
Great. All right. Any questions from commissioners of staff? Ms. Zero.
I just had one. The third part of this was the housing study. And that's not addressed in our codes, right? That's just something that's ancillary to what our wording would be for our development code.
That is correct. The third part of the bill involves an annual report and every 5-year update to housing study for the city. And that's being handled right now through the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. They're working on coming up with a comprehensive solution for all its member towns and cities to address this, because they recognize that could be extremely burdensome for a lot of communities.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, this is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item whatsoever, now is the time. Anybody at all? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the table for discussion, and we already have staff's recommendation. So, any further discussion amongst the commissioners? Seeing none, let's call for the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ballard.
I'd like to place on the floor approval of ID 24-4545, request to amend City Code Sections 14.05.03, standard regulatory procedures, to add time frames for administrative completeness of zoning applications, and 14.05.04K5, zoning map amendment protest to exclude government-owned property from protest property area.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ballard, a second by Ms. Zero, to approve ID 244545 as stated. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the question. Oops.
The motion passes 7-0.
Okay, at this point, this is where we have the call to the public, where anybody in the audience can address the commission on any subject whatsoever. We may not respond, but the podium is open. Anybody at all, call to the public. Hearing none, I'll close the call to the public and back to staff for future meetings. Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The December 4th, 2024 meeting has been canceled with no items on the agenda. December 18th, we have a new item that will be addressed, and that is for a city facility. Mulberry Treatment Plant is going to be adding a new laboratory facility, and that'll be on the agenda for a rezone for that property from R1 to P1. And the January 1st meeting is canceled as well for New Year's Day. And the next meeting after that will be on January 15th, 2025. And that, we're not absolutely sure on that one, but we have 3 rezones with or without general plan amendments that are in various stages of coming to you guys. So we don't know how many we'll get on that day.
Okay.
So that's the update.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. And thank you, commissioners. We stand adjourned.